The following is a series of interviews of some of my students. They were requested to talk about the research project that they conducted as part of their course, Deep Learning for the Internet of Things in fall 2020. Assalamu alaikum, Abdullah.
Walaikum salam.
So Abdullah, thanks for agreeing to take part in this brief interview. Can I request you to please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm Abdullah. I am a first year master's student at IBA. And last semester, I took this course with Dr. Ghani, Deep Learning for the Internet of Things, in which I had a project on Urdu OCR using deep learning. So I'd like to talk about that today.
Okay, great. So if you can tell us, Abdullah, a little bit about your project and also particularly what motivated you to take this particular area of research.
Yeah, okay. So I'll start with the title. The title was Understanding CNN Behavior on Urdu OCR Using Lime. So
Okay.
I used a recent open source dataset of Urdu handwritten characters. And I performed optical character recognition on it using a deep learning algorithm.
Okay.
So I didn't just want to get the best accuracy from my algorithm. I was also interested in the question, is the algorithm right for the right reasons? So not only that, it correctly predicts handwritten Urdu characters with, for example, 85% accuracy or 90% accuracy, etc. But to sort of get in the shoes of the algorithm and to see what it sees when it looks at these characters.
Okay, very good. So
The
as we,
motivation
Gigi,
was,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so the motivation was, I think what brought me to the subject area was the desire to do something in the Urdu language. I think I feel it like a responsibility that something should be done. I've personally felt frustrated many times when trying to look up some Urdu content online, or the search is never too good. It's a low resource language online. So I've also tried to digitize some Urdu notes for a professor and felt some frustrations there. So I think there is some personal and some cultural connect to this work.
Right. So for those of you who are not familiar with Urdu, it's the local language that is spoken in Pakistan, and various dialects of it are also spoken in the subcontinent as well. It's also our national language, I believe. And it's extremely important for us to be able to manage and handle Urdu here.
Right. In fact, if I may add, Urdu is also spoken in India, and it's also spoken around the region. So not just in India and Pakistan, but just around the region. In Bangladesh also it's spoken. And the Urdu script is also borrowed by other regional languages, such as Punjabi, such as Pashto. So they have similar scripts as well. So the work that is done in Urdu OCR would definitely carry over into regional languages. So in all, they have estimated upwards of 250 million people have this as their linguistic identity.
Okay. Abdullah, can you share with us some of the results that you've been able to achieve in your research?
Yeah, certainly. So the major result was that even though the algorithm achieved high prediction accuracy of almost 90%, so this accuracy is a upgrade of roughly 6% over the previous result on the same data set. So my result is 6% higher in terms of prediction accuracy. But what's more is that I'm also applying some sort of explanation on this model. So even though the high prediction accuracy is there, what it learned, the algorithm, in order to make the predictions, by which what I mean is what it was looking at when it looked at, for example, a swad versus a sheen. So these are two Urdu characters. So what it looked at when it looked at these two characters was non-standard. So it was not something that a domain expert would look at to distinguish the characters. Instead, the algorithm appears to have created its own some unique classification for Urdu characters. And so, which then takes us into another question, which is what's important about the traditionally learnable features of the Urdu characters? Is there something important about the way that we traditionally learn the Urdu characters? So that is the question that I think I will explore going on from here.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about the technology, the technique that you used, or the algorithms that you used for conducting this project?
Sure. So I trained a standard convolutional neural network, which is a deep learning technique. And the CNN architecture is just the standard architecture that you can find lots of information about online as well. I, of course, tuned that architecture to suit my task, which was Urdu OCR. So there are lots of values which we call hyperparameters in the CNN. So I tuned the hyperparameters to make the model work better, which means that it predicts the characters better. So that was the deep learning technique. And the explanation technique is known as LIME. So I use this technique and it works with individual pictures. And what it does is it highlights few regions in the picture that the algorithm is picking up on when making predictions. So for example, when the algorithm is predicting swad or scene, it might look at the different upper halves of these two characters. So these two characters have the same lower halves, but their upper halves are different. And so we think that the algorithm will look at the upper halves. So it ought to.
Yeah.
Hence, now we have the need to validate this intuition that we have using LIME.
Okay. And did you feel that the results that you got, you were satisfied with the explanation that Lime was able to provide?
Yeah, so I think that this is a very good question, but there's a lot to explore just in this domain because I think Lime has a few limitations, and some of those limitations might just be the limitations of explanation in general, and some of those limitations will be about the Lime method. So about the Lime method, one limitation is that it's learning a linear model. So even though the CNN is a highly complex model, so it has lots of nonlinear activations, lots of nonlinear parts in the model. But Lime is trying to use that and learn a linear model and then use that as an explanation. So this could be a bottleneck in Lime itself. But there are also few limitations, I feel, which the explanation itself might have. Having said that, I think there is still value that this explanation has generated for us in terms of highlighting some regions of the pictures where the algorithm seems to be learning in a way that we did not expect it to learn. So now those regions can now be looked upon further.
Okay. So here's a question which perhaps I should have actually asked you earlier on, is that maybe if you can you can sort of in a layman's terms, explain your research and how that will actually help the common man on the street.
Okay. So the research can help. There are few stakeholders here that I can think of, which the research could be beneficial for. So of course there is the research community, there is the industry, and then we can talk about the layperson, right? So for the layperson, of course there is the value of it is attached to the value of the domain area itself, which is Urdu OCR, right? So Urdu OCR is used in things like the postal system, for example, right? Because a lot of post is written, uh, still addressed in Urdu. So digitizing that accurately is a direct benefit for the lay audience. Any other task that someone wants to, for example, digitize some Urdu online, so that's how it could benefit them. I imagine that for schools, this could be beneficial in the time of COVID. So if students wants to write something in Urdu and then upload that online, and then that gets digitized and fed into some automatic grader or something like that. So I think there is some educational benefit that we could accrue from this as well. In terms of the research community, would you like me to also
Gigi,
share my
please go
thoughts
ahead.
on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think if we step back and think about generally the problem of interpretability here, so there is both a interest and a need to better understand deep learning algorithms. So we are confronted with these algorithms that have hundreds of thousands or even millions of vectors uh, that they are internally handling, and this sheer volume of data is beyond the scope of programmers to understand, or for anybody to understand. There is just too much data that this deep learning algorithm is handling. So we are still hoping to explain, even if that is in a reductive fashion, the inner workings of these algorithms. So then I think for that, there is value in the endeavor for the research community. And the value is on two accounts. Number one is that it is adding new knowledge to the research domain of Urdu OCR itself. And number two, it is helping us understand the limits to the knowledge in this domain. So, which is also very crucial in itself, to understand the limits to this knowledge so that the domain area can be better generalized. I think industry can also benefit. So that's the third stakeholder. Um, and that's because these techniques are helping build trust between the algorithm and the user. So it's helping demystify the product, the algorithm. It's helping build transparency with the customer. So the customer who traditionally would mistrust the algorithm, for example, we are all using Facebook, other social media, and we sometimes distrust their algorithms. Uh, uh, be it like, the algorithm that suggests us something to buy, or some other suggestive algorithm. So more understanding of these algorithms means that the customer would trust the algorithm more, and the industry would benefit.
And that's been one of the problems with this whole area of neural networks and deep neural networks, is that the explainability is actually has always been missing. It's always been a black box,
Right.
which has found which has done remarkably well, but we really don't know why it's done so well.
Right.
And I think this particular research of yours with and use of Lime, I think should go a long way in order to be able to give that satisfaction to the end user, that they can understand what's happening behind, what's happening in the algorithm's mind.
Right.
So
In fact, if I share an anecdote with you that I heard online, there was this researcher who was giving a TED talk, and she explains that um, I think it was Facebook that had a model that was trying to predict um, sales of some airline tickets. And what happened is that the model started selling the tickets to bipolar people who were just about to have an onset of some bipolar attack. And it turns out that people who have bipolar disorder, they have these phases in which they go into a spending spree. And they are more susceptible to gambling, to spending, and other compulsive habits. So the algorithm was picking up on such people and selling airline tickets to them. And we have no way of understanding that because these algorithms are black box models. So I think all these explanation tools are definitely also a ethical step towards better understanding what's happening.
very good. So excellent, Abdullah. Thank you very much for your time. Do you have any
Thank you.
plans, I hope, to publish this work or to continue doing research in this area?
Yes, I do. I do plan to continue um, pursuing this. I think there is still some work to be done, especially as I highlighted in the results section. There is the larger question of whether the way that we traditionally distinguish Urdu characters Is there something special about that, or is the way the CNN is predicting it is good enough? So I would like to work on that question.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Abdullah.